On this day in history, March 10th, 1535, Spaniard Fray, Tomás de Berlanga, the fourth Bishop of Panama, discovers the Galápagos Islands by chance on his way to Peru. Included in the following is an excerpt from the 1944 edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica going over the history of the islands. Galápagos Islands, an archipelago in the Pacific consisting of 12 large and several hundred small islands on the equator, 650 miles due west of Ecuador, to which country they belong. Population from 1941, 2,156. They were discovered by the Spaniards early in the 16th century, but only 3 islands have ever been utilized, these chiefly as convict stations. At various times, they have been visited by British ships of war, New England whalers, pirates, buccaneers, and numerous scientific expeditions. Charles Darwin, when on the voyage of the Beagle, obtained from the insular forms of Galapagos finches valuable data for his Origin of Species. The English name of the major islands are Albemarle, Indefatigable, James, Narborough, Charles, Chatham, Hood, Barrington, Duncan, Tower, Bindelow, and Abington. Albemarle is irregular in shape, but most of the others are roughly circular, with a single high crater in the center. Albemarle is the largest, 75 miles in length, and in 1925 broke into eruption. Since then, the craters of Narborough have been active. The shores of the islands are low, while in the interior, craters may rise to an extreme height of 5,000 feet. The coast shows an alternation of dense mangroves, beaches of white sand, and rugged cliffs of gray lava. Very little rain falls near the sea, where the vegetation is semi-desert, chiefly cactus and thorn trees. The luxuriance increases on the uplands, where the moisture becomes more general. The Antarctic Humboldt Current keeps the temperature of the surrounding water well below equatorial average. The name is derived from the Spanish Galápago, a tortoise, and refers to the giant forms which have evolved on the islands. Some of these have reached a length of 4 feet or more, weighing nearly 400 pounds, and individuals perhaps attain an age of 300 to 400 years, making them the oldest living animals on the earth. In past years, almost every island had its peculiar species of tortoise, but they are now on the verge of extinction. This has been due to the carrying away of thousands by whalers for food, to slaughter of great numbers for their oil, and the wholesale devouring of eggs and young by wild dogs and pigs. A remarkable fact about the Galapagos fauna is the large proportion of forms peculiar to the islands, namely 37% of all species of shorefish, 40% of the plants, and 96% of the reptiles. But the amount of zoological work remaining to be done is indicated by a collection of moths brought back by one of the most recent expeditions, of which half of the 52 species were new to science. The virtual absence of mankind since the times of the buccaneers has resulted in a remarkable absence of fear on the part of all forms of native animal life. In fact, the only really wild creatures are the dogs, cats, pigs, goats, and donkeys, which have been wrecked or intentionally left on the islands in past years. The sea lions, which are abundant and astonishingly tame, are of southern derivation, doubtless via the Humboldt Current. Besides small lizards and snakes, there are 2 large iguana-like lizards, one marine and feeding on algae, and both showing many primitive characters. 15 species of giant tortoises formerly inhabited the island, and 85 kinds of birds have been recorded. Of special interest are the flamingos, which breed on James Island, and the flightless cormorants, with diminutive wings, which are found only near Albemarle. But it is doubtful if there are more than 100 of these adult cormorants left in existence today. The small black finches exhibit amazing variation. Some have bills heavier and thicker than a grosbeak's, while in others the mandibles are as slender as those of a warbler. The dominant theory of the formation of these islands, first sponsored by Darwin, is that they have always been isolated both from one another and from the mainland, the gradual stocking being by accidental arrivals. Important evidence is accumulating, however, that at one time the submerged plateau which connects the archipelago with Central America was dry land. For instance, except for the penguins, which even today could easily swim from Peru along the Antarctic Humboldt Current, Every species of native bird shows closer relations with Central than with South America, and much the same is true of other groups such as the shorefish and land plants, while the nearest relations of the giant tortoises are found fossils in Cuba. If the stocking of the Galapagos with living creatures had been by advantageous arrivals, they could only have come by the southern current, which turns westward at the latitude of Peru. There seems little doubt that the archipelago was at one time a single island. Furthermore, the presence of 5 forms of tortoises on Albemarle hints that formerly this island was more deeply submerged, so that only its 5 major craters were above water. The most recent scientific expeditions are those sent out by the New York Zoological Society, 2 under the direction of William Beebe, and the last under C.H. Townsend. The latter was successful in bringing back over 200 tortoises from Albemarle for distribution to various favorable situations, where efforts will be made to breed them and save the race from extinction.